It's got in this copy, oh, they've recently pledged to increase defence spending to 2.5%, hit the NATO target. Aren't we marvellous? The reason it's not at that target now is because, as Chancellor, Rishi Sunak refused to fund it. So just shut up, Grant Shapps.
Begin by speaking about Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary. He's told The Times that Conservative MPs must get behind Rishi Sunak. He's been speaking to the paper's political editor, Stephen Swinford. So Grant Shapps says rebellious backbenchers should forget any idea of replacing the Prime Minister before the general election, and highlighted how the passing of the Rwanda bill and the increase of defence spending shows the government, in his words, is where the public is. Well, it comes as rumours continue to swirl around the prospect of the election being called. Well, there was some suggestion it could be Monday. Downing Street says that's not going to be the case. We will see. Susie, first of all, I mean, it's slightly bizarre, isn't it, that the Defence Secretary is saying people should get behind the Prime Minister in the week of the local elections. It doesn't bode well.
Well, look, Grant Shapps would say anything to anybody just about any time you asked him a question. Everything that he has said is just about where the public isn't, and the polls show it and prove it. Just saying the alternative doesn't make it so, despite what they've managed to get through on Rwanda. But the whole interview is, I just read it, and it's the most simplistic, ahistorical pile of rubbish. I'm sure Steve Swinford asked him the right questions, but the answers that he's got out of him are just astonishing. To say that, oh, everything's fine, not to worry, we just need to send more weapons to Ukraine and everything will be fixed, and Germany should do it too, completely ignores the fact that Germany's got some historic, very complicated relationships with Germany and with weaponry, which what's mitigating against that. To say that Britain is now on a war footing, hurrah, hurrah, look at us, aren't we big and tough? And when on a war footing means to borrow on the never never and spend furiously. That's what, we didn't pay off our debts from the Second World War, I think until sort of the noughties or the late 90s. To say you're on a war footing is not where we are now, because in the next breath he said that Rishi Sunak had to seal the sums and wouldn't do anything that wasn't properly funded. So actually we're still penny pinching. That's not how you fight a war. At the end of the Second World War, some ARP wardens, the state increased. It didn't decrease during wartime in our history. ARP wardens, some of them were paid by the state to walk up and down your road telling you to turn the light off. Can you imagine what the current modern Conservative Party would say if someone was paid to do that today? Added to which, it's got in this copy, oh, they've recently pledged to increase defence spending to 2.5%, hit the NATO target. Aren't we marvellous? The reason it's not at that target now is because, as Chancellor, Rishi Sunak refused to fund it. So just shut up, Grant Shapps, and don't make me read this stuff again, please, Times Radio. I'm so cross.
Rod, I mean, to be fair, by government terms, this week's been pretty good.
Yes, it has been pretty good for them by government terms, but that's adding up to a whole hill of beans for them. And there's a certain truth in what Susie says. If the government was really serious about defence, then in Jeremy Hunt's budget, what was it, 6 weeks ago? 5 weeks ago? There would have been some spending for defence. I mean, it's remarkable that there wasn't any. So it seems to be that it's only in the last kind of couple of weeks that Rishi Sunak has suddenly woken up and seen that, the world's not looking terribly friendly at the moment, is it? Perhaps we ought to spend some more money. And again, as Susie says, 2.5% by 2030 isn't war footing. And it's a gradual increase of expenditure, which they're apparently going to fund by sacking 72,000 civil servants. Now, this is where Susie and I will differ. I very much hope they do that, but I can't.
Who's going to do their work, though?
Well, probably these 72,000 are the ones who aren't coming into work at the moment, because I see that's also a story this morning. There is a lot of fat to be trimmed in the civil service, which hasn't been trimmed because of the unions there. But I think where Susie is most right is on the simplistic analysis of what Putin is up to and what the world is up to, and the sudden realization within the Conservative Party that this is a really dangerous time at the moment. We should be spending more than 2.5% on defence, I'm afraid, because we've been underfunding defence for so long. And Nonetheless, yeah, it's been a better week than usual for the government, but I don't think it matters a damn as far as the electorate's concerned.
I mean, obviously, the government, Susie, need to look strong, don't they? They're heading into local elections by anybody's estimations. When we speak to a polling expert yesterday on the programme saying, it's not looking good. Whichever way you look at it, there's potentially hundreds of seats which are going to be lost by the Conservative Party. Talking about war, talking about Rwanda, sending migrants there, and that all getting passed this week. That does help them. I'm just wondering, there is this rumour about there might be an announcement of a date of an election. Do we need to know a date of election? I'm just wondering how sustainable it is for Rishi Sunak to keep going, end of the year, end of the year. Would it help anybody to know when that date is, even if he says October the 25th or whenever?
Well, it helped me because I've got 50 quid on it. And it was...
What, on October the 25th?
Like
I picked a random... that could be a Sunday, I don't know.
Add that to national insurance cut, Susie.
But no, it's the fact that if you want to try and look tough and win the local elections by saying something about Rwanda or we're on a war footing, I mean, yes, people in local elections do often vote according to the national picture, and that's how it is. But, in local elections, you're selecting someone who's going to sort out or not sort out the potholes in your street, who's going to empty the bins or not empty the bins, who's going to keep the street lights on or off, who is going to up your council tax or try and freeze it, because they never bring it down, do they? The idea that you can save yourself with the kinds of policies that, if two buffoons like Rod and I can pick holes in it in about 3 seconds flat, the rest of the country will certainly be able to see through. Is cloud cuckoo land, and that's where they are. They're just on Mount Denial, hoping all the waters won't wash them away. But they're going to have to call an election fairly soon. I hope. That's where I've put my money, and I don't have much of it, so I better come through. But after the locals, if they lose hundreds of seats, there's going to be huge calls in the party for Rishi to go. Can he survive it? They're a bunch of turkeys who don't want to vote for Christmas. He probably could survive something after that, but it would just add to the overall Tory narrative of decay, corruption, failure, just the tail end of something awful that everybody is fed up with now. However you vote, whether you're a Tory or a Labour or somewhere in between, people are just bored. They're bored of this merry-go-round of bonkersness, and they want just some competence wherever it might be, and they're prepared to give the other guys a go. And it's as simple as that.
Rod, how sustainable is it then not to have a date?
I'm not so sure about that. I do think that we may see in the May election results a bit of damage to the Labour Party in certain areas, particularly those areas where either George Galloway's lot are standing themselves or where they're in an alliance with the Liberal Democrats, in such places as Scotland, in Rochdale. I think there is a danger to Labour there, and my guess, and it's only a guess, is that Labour won't do quite as well as many people have been predicting in the May elections. They're going to lose a few seats as well. Now, that, I suppose, might provoke Rishi to think that the time is right, therefore, to capitalise on any good news whatsoever and go for an election. I still have my doubts about it. I still think that if they're going to have any kind of strategy at all, then the strategy is to say, we are mending the economy, we're building up our defence, the country is now running on the right lines, we will have an election in November, which is when I've always thought it was going to be. And I would have thought that was probably the best way forward for them. I think to a larger degree as well, many of the calls for Sunak to go have quietened down a little bit of late. And my guess is that will continue when people realise that their own seats are more at risk from their fractiousness and fissiparousness than they are from, trying to get a new leader, which, as Susie absolutely rightly says, we're sick of having new leaders foisted upon us without the benefit of being able to elect them.